They said it couldn't be done.
Yes, it was impossible. And first try, they got it to land onto the Starship Tower. So
You know
something
that
like a 40 strip,
You know that Scott Walter and Larry Goldberg were there. I
right?
mean, darn them anyway. I would have loved to have seen that one in person. Holy mackerel.
Yes. So the Starship landing there, doing the impossible is going to change a lot more than people realize. So we're going to go over that with my friend Randy Kirk. And so the cell tower. So there's 5 million cell towers in the world providing all of our communications to our nice little iPhones here and other Android phones. Each cell tower costs about $150,000 to $1 million. And then there's also rent because they don't own the land. That's $30,000, $200,000. The satellites that SpaceX is putting up now cost only um, the version one costs $200,000. The minis, which are bigger, about 3 times bigger, $800,000, and they cost about $300,000 to launch, so about $1 million. So not outside the range of a cell tower. And then we're going to make satellites that are like 3 times bigger in terms of weight, but which will be perhaps 6 times larger in terms of the area that they cover. They'll be $1.2 million and $30,000 to launch because the launch cost will go down because Starship is so capable. And Elon has said that the bandwidth could be 10 times more than current satellites. Geosynchronous satellites, the ones like five or so that Viasat and some other big companies have, those things cost $100 million or more.
Hmm.
So the transformation on the launch side is also matched by transformation on the satellite side. And then we're also transforming the dish side because we're so much closer, 50 times closer. We can make these nice flat phased array receivers, and they can be smaller. The Starlink Mini is about the size of a um, MacBook Pro laptop that I'm currently working on. And then the bigger you make the stuff up top, up in the sky, then the smaller you can make the stuff down here. Comparing it to a football field down below, when you unpack the Gen 3 satellite, have 10 of them laid really side by side, they would have the area of a football field, which is about comparable to what the area is of the International Space Station.
Oh, okay.
But the Starship will launch 120 of these 2-ton satellites at one time, which would mean that if 10 of them cover a football field, I can launch 12 football fields worth of satellites up every time I go. And the cost could be brought down to $2 million just paying for the fuel and nothing else, because I would not be reusing or not getting rid of any part of the rocket itself. And SpaceX has already proved this all works with um, cell phones, sending texts after Hurricane Helene and after the Florida hurricane, Hurricane Milton. And then they're going to increase the communication speed up to 300 megabits per second or gigabit per second for direct to cell phone. And then they'll increase to the millions of customers on the dishes, going from 100 megabits per second to a gigabit per second. So all of the things are improving by 10 times, 100 times, which will ultimately mean 2G phone, text, voice, and internet everywhere directly to your cell phone, directly to your bot, and then high bandwidth speed at 1 gigabit per second. So equivalent to fiber in every way. And this will be an explosion of revenue. They already make about $10 billion per year for Starlink this year. They can increase the number of customers by 4 times and get to $40 billion per year more next year. And then Starlink will really kick in and they'll get up to 100 billion, $200 billion per year in terms of revenue there.
Now, is that revenue just for the consumer like you and me on our laptop, or are having a Starlink? Are we talking about the cruise ships and the military and all the other kinds of things that they're doing?
The cruise ship and military, um, those things are about $10 billion per year. It depends how much of the military and banking communication there is.
I see.
It could, if you had 1 million customers and they were each paying $20,000
Mhm.
per year for super encrypted, for banking and for military, then that's $20 billion
So,
per year. Other services for different kinds of satellites, whereas uh, they have something called Starshield. So they have Starshield for military communications, and they could also have enhanced spy satellites or other things, but they have not developed that alternative systems yet. Um, so it's tougher to predict how that
yes.
ramps up and how quickly they do that. It will be substantial. And then cruise ships and the airlines, um, that would probably be about again up to 5 billion, $10 billion per year once you have that fully saturated with that capability.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
And then you talk about not talking about new capability because
Right.
if I'm picking up entirely new satellites, things that can do stuff that we can't do now, improved hardware, then new business, new customers, new services, which will be a big thing. We just don't know how big it will be. Yeah.
Okay.
So then this capability basically means 10 times, 100 times more bandwidth up there. We talk about satellites. Currently, SpaceX has put up 90% of the payloads this year in terms of mass. So this beating out entire countries of China, being number two, all of Europe. When this thing all started, um, Europe and China were the leaders in commercial, and then Russia was also a major player in commercial, and basically entire countries were put out of the commercial satellite launch business by SpaceX and the Falcon 9. And now they're going to fall behind the Starship because they have not, no one's replicated the landing of an orbital class 20-ton uh, payload rocket other than SpaceX, who's done it like almost 300 times.
Right. Right. Right.
So,
Okay. The many people watching this right now are probably aware of what's happening with Starlink. They're aware that it's a, really cool thing if you need it, that it's being, used for emergency situations and all kinds of opportunities out there. Elon's gotten a lot of PR off of it, just in the recent past with a couple of these hurricanes. We've had some, conversations about the military applications that have been happening in the Ukraine and in Israel. The U.S. government has already paid Elon 500 million to develop the ability to deploy a Starship anywhere in the world in 45 minutes and leave off a whole bunch of goodies like men
mhm,
and supplies anywhere in the world in 45 minutes. But what you and I have spent a lot of time talking about for the 2 years that we've been doing this online is about strategery, military strategery, which doesn't just include troops and supplies and weaponry, but it also includes, well, communication.
right,
And so for all of time, no matter what your troop capabilities were, whatever your weapons capability was, you wanted to be able to communicate between your forces, between the top and the guys in the field, and you also want to be able to communicate between different cadres that might be, landing on the beaches versus already on the ground. So strategically, this Starship thing, already with Falcon, but Starship and all those satellites up there create a massive strategic advantage to the United States.
right,
And I don't hear anybody talking about this. So I'm going to
right,
say this is the first channel
mhm,
that is talked about. It's a strategic advantage from the standpoint of troops on the ground, are the ability to move equipment and stuff on the ground. Just the ability to communicate and know where to send something, and to
mhm,
make sure that your troops know, your troops and your commanders know what you're doing. But then there's the overall communications ability for your country, just normally.
right,
That's a strategic advantage. You and I have talked about strategic advantages that I've been worried about, like the drone business.
yeah,
Elon has said, I've said, I think drones are going to be the most important, military fixture in the future. We've talked about this, the development of energy resources being extremely important strategically to different countries and how China is so far ahead right now in terms of deployment. But we haven't talked about communications. And
Right.
it seems to me to be maybe in some way, well, the other thing we talked about,
Hmm.
you reminded me in the green room
Yeah.
about the ability of a Starship to launch any kind of a metal piece, like a
Yeah.
ball bearing or hundreds of ball bearings, at 25 times you told me the speed of sound.
Yep.
And then
Yep.
what would happen?
It would have more explosive power than, if I had a chemical explosive, you max out at about like 1.7 times the mass, right? So your little, super grenade can do that. When I have the same weight of material, it would be, 4 times more powerful than that with, if it's going 25 times the speed of sound. If it's going 35 times the speed of sound, it would be like 10 times more powerful. So it would be like, you're concentrating the kinetic energy would be more powerful than the chemical explosives. And you wouldn't have to add it. You just like when I release it and then send it on its way, it would then just hit with this huge force. And then whatever I'd want to, if I want to knock a plane out of the sky, I want to knock a missile out of the sky, it's like just release a bunch of them, and then nothing in the square mile would fly, or anything on the ground as well. So whatever you want to take out, you can. If I was to, make one big large piece, it'd be more powerful than any bunker buster. So it gets you to a next level. And also the communications is next level in that
Yeah,
right now we have, okay, they used to talk about how developed your country was in terms of like how many cell phones you had, how many or regular phones you had, and the US got ahead of the rest of the world with after World War II and before, being the leaders with Graham Bell to have more phones than anyone else, so you can communicate better. And it was a difference between a developed country and an undeveloped country.
right.
Now you have a super developed country with higher density of communications everywhere, right? Where it's like, um, you know, no matter where you are, you can communicate and at high speed, gigabit everywhere. It's like, oh, I have to be where I am with my fiber connection. I have to be at home, have to be at my desk. And now I can be anywhere. I can be, in the forest. And that goes to the military thing as well, where it's like high speed communication, not like, oh, I'm barely communicating with, some radio thing or some set up a dish. I can have um, uncompromised communications, you know, everywhere at high speed for business and for other applications, and be totally secure as well. And it'd be 100 times more than any other country, and only in good times where everyone's like, okay, we're working along, we're all getting along, we'll let you use our system.
Right. Yes.
But then when we say, no, you're being not nice to me, I'm turning it off for you. So then everyone has, just like right now, in Ukraine, we must have your communication. Israel must have your communication. And satellite communication, that's the early version of Starlink. And
Right.
then when it goes to the fiber everywhere, 2G everywhere onto phones, and then also with, data and other communications up there, it's this other thing that cannot be taken down. People talk about, oh, well, we can, if they shoot it, we'll create a bunch of like space debris and then things will be taken out. You have these starships that can go and clean it all up.
Yeah,
Go
right.
open it up, clean up all the space debris, put up new satellites. Oh, you took out 100 satellites, blah blah blah. We'll fix
We'll
that.
just put up one
One,
Starship and
one more
replace.
launch and then we're good. Right. So it gives an utter domination of communications, equivalent to, you know, having 99% of everyone with a home landline phone
Right.
back in the 40s and 50s or to 60s, something like that, to, cell phone domination in the 90s. It was an extra level of commerce and capability that everyone didn't have.
And something that can't be replicated anytime soon. I mean, you're not talking, I mean, Elon again has created such a system because he's mass producing the rockets already.
Right.
these starships that have not been fully tested yet. He's got bunches of them already ready to go. They're just sitting in a line waiting for the next launch, and he can speed that process up. I think he's planning to build 1,000 a year.
Yeah, probably heading up to 1,000 a year. At least a few hundred, and then up to 1,000 a
Going
year.
up to
Yeah.
1,000 a year. So he's mass producing the rockets. So nobody's even at the point of making the first rocket. He's already got a plan, and he's already beginning to ramp up mass production of the rockets. Then he's able to launch them. Basically, he's just proven that he has the ability eventually to launch them once an hour.
Mhm.
Just bring them down, land them. He's got to land the ship too, but I don't think that's going to be an issue if he could land
The booster, he can land the
booster. He
Starship.
should
That's
be able
right.
to land the Starship. So he lands both of them. And an hour later, he's got it fueled up and ready to go, and he launches again. Nobody's even had the first landing, as you pointed out a minute ago. So
Of
that's
something 10 times smaller, right?
10 times smaller. He's decades ahead of everybody on that. You combine those two things, along with the satellite technology, which is also being mass produced.
Right.
Nobody, do you know of anybody else that's mass producing satellites?
No, because
No, no,
Starlink right now has 7,000 satellites up there. The
right,
rest of the world, over many decades, has about 3,000.
right,
They put more up before, but then they came out of the sky. So everyone else is launching, like that 10%,
right,
right? Like of the payloads, 90% is SpaceX, and 80% of that is Starlink satellites,
right.
right? Because the vast majority of where they're launching is Starlink, because no one else can match the mass production. And
No,
then going to your mass production thing, it's even more. The mass production and the cost reduction is even bigger than what you're talking about, because the Raptor engines,
right,
they need 40 engines for every Starship. They need 10 for every Falcon 9. Nine
right.
in the base stage, one in the second stage. So they are mass producing those engines at like 5,000, 5,000 a year, right? Enough to make, 100. So then they'll upgrade that to 50,000 a year of engines. And the engine cost of $250,000, maybe $500,000, is 100 times less than the $50 million it costs for the RS-24, whatever, the basic space shuttle engine. So the space shuttle engine that was used in the 1980s and 90s
Yeah,
is
yeah,
still the same engine that they're using
yeah,
for the SLS rocket. And it's like one engine costs more than the entire Starship, right? And so then the mass production of it and the cost reduction, you have to get your cost down 100 times. You have to get your production up 1,000 times, 10,000 times, right? And then also the launch tower. It's cost like $4 billion for the NASA Slick 40 or whatever, Space Launch Center, whatever, right? Because they have these launch towers that are along the coast of Florida, and then
right.
some in California, and then Russia has theirs over wherever they are, in Vladivostok. So those things cost billions of dollars, and it takes like however
Years.
long to make them, years to make them. SpaceX just put up two of these things, each one costing, I don't know, 20 million, $50 million, something like that. And every time I have a Starship and a booster, if I'm flying them once a day, right? Or if I fly just the upper stage, suborbital, right? And I'm launching them like once an hour, right? Each one of those, it's like a runway for an airplane, in that I need a dedicated runway because I'm launching all this time. I can't like keep lifting in these 200-ton objects or 1,000-ton objects. And then, one flew up, I got a bunch lined up and then launching. I need to have each one with a dedicated launch tower,
Yeah,
right? So I need to, if I have 1,000 Starships, I have on the order of 500 or 1,000 launch towers to land and to take off from,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So then I have to make them at about 10 million, $100 million a piece,
Yep.
right? Then $100 million, okay, I'm going to launch infrastructure around the world for 1,000 launch towers, right?
Right.
So by the scale of what I'm doing, so I'm going to 1,000 Starships per every 2 years going to Mars, right? So that means I need to have hundreds of launch towers.
Yeah,
Even if I'm reusing a bunch,
yeah,
I would have to by definition get to that number, right? That goes to the air cargo thing I've talked about before, where they will take over air cargo by launching from near New York to near Tokyo and then take out the 14-hour travel time with a 1 hour flight, right? But I'll have to then have multiple launch towers at each one. It's just like I have multiple runways at John F. Kennedy Airport, right?
Right.
I have to have multiple runways. Each launch tower will become like a runway, right? Where I'm like launching and catching all of these rockets.
Yeah, and they said that the cost to take a package from LA to New York in 45 minutes will be about the same cost that it now costs to send a UPS package from LA to New York in 5 days.
Right, right. So it's completely going to change the world. And then once they've done that a million times,
Right.
10 million times, and prove the safety of it,
And
that's where you convert over to passenger travel, where in a Starship, everyone will kind of like load in slightly reclined, like you're going into some roller coasters, right?
yes,
And then you have a bit of a roller coaster ride,
yes,
um, you
yeah,
know, up at, 2G, 3G, and then land at 2G, 3G. So you have to be able to take that. But then you could then, once this is like common, you could have breakfast in New York, have your lunch in Paris, and then have your dinner in Tokyo,
right.
right? You can just like, I'm going around the world. And the question will be, how does this affect your jet lag,
Yeah,
your rocket lag? It's like if, how much is this impacting? Like, how tired are you as you pop? But then you could go back and sleep in your home if you lived in New York. You can go,
yeah, just
breakfast,
just
lunch,
go keep going.
go right back, and then it's almost like the um poor man's Star Trek teleportation,
Yeah.
where it's like I'm just like everywhere I want to go, I'm going.
And again,
Things,
Elon's estimating that he could probably send you from LA to Hong Kong, let's say, for about the same price as a business class ticket,
right,
45
right,
minutes.
yeah. But then you're saving time. You're saving like a whole day of travel. So it's like,
I,
is your
I
time worth that?
I won't pay for business class to get the extra leg room, but to do it in 45 minutes instead
Yeah.
of 15 hours or whatever, no, that's okay. I can see that.
Yeah, and there will be no dinner on the flight because it's
That's
only
what
45 minutes, right?
you want to,
It's
yeah, I
like,
won't even have time for a Coke.
yeah, no Coke. And the thing is, you're traveling at G's or weightless at various points, so it's like no moving around trying to give you stuff. It's like you're in there for 45 minutes, you're out.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess but I think the thing that was really the newest to me on this was just the idea of the strategic reality.
Hmm.
Uh, you talked to a minute ago in the green room also about this, my big worry about how far ahead China is on the strategic front with regard to energy because they're putting in so many solar panels. And you said something about, well, once Optimus gets out there, what was that?
Optimus, so solar panels take about two-thirds of their cost related to some form of labor, either installation or production side. So if I automate that side and reduce labor costs 10 times, then I've made my solar panel 3 times cheaper, and I could install them 10 times, 100 times faster.
Master.
So a Tesla bot enabled solar energy construction and megapack construction will get deployment of everything way, 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 way faster. And then the other thing would be that Starship, when I was talking about 40,000 football field size satellites, because they could go to the slightly larger side of a Gen 4, you'd be looking at, megawatt or multiple megawatts per satellite, that 40,000. So I'd have like 40 gigawatts of power just from my communication satellites. So you can make dedicated energy satellites that would then, send down, um,
Beam it down, Scotty.
beam it down, Scotty. Yeah. So then go to terawatts of power from that. So power won't be a problem.
Okay, good. Glad to hear it. That solves one of my problems.
Yeah.
Maybe some other day we'll talk about the drones again.
Yeah.
Although, if you can shoot the ball bearings, you'll just knock out all the drones. I don't know.
That's right.
have to figure that out someday.
Okay, so sounds good. So we'll talk about that in the next video and do deep dives on that. Thank you.